What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, July 11th, 2019. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have got a lot to talk about today. And so the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Sam is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. And obviously, I want to start off right now with a message to any of our listeners who are in the Gulf states right now. It is a mess there. They're expecting 2 feet of rain. They're expecting possible flooding, possible levee collapses. Tropical Storm Barry is strengthening. They're expecting it to become a hurricane over the weekend. Some parts of the Gulf states are already underneath a hurricane watch. Louisiana has declared a state of emergency. And there are many areas where there are now mandatory evacuations. And so if somebody knocks on the door and says, you got to get out of here, you'd better listen to them. This is going to be a bad one. And I was just over at the NOAA website looking at the predicted storm track. This is going to go right up that Mississippi Valley. And it's going to reach right across Tennessee, even into Indiana. And so it's a nasty one. So please keep an eye out. Keep your radio turned on. Listen to the news channels, and just make sure that you're all going to be safe. And because it is going to be a nasty one. It really will be. All right, so let's get in and talk a little bit about Jeff Epstein. This story is not going away. There's more and more stuff coming on out. Some of it's nonsense. They're trying to junk up the discussion with all kinds of nonsensical stuff. It's jamming. Just like in World War II, where they would jam legitimate radio broadcasts with bogus radio broadcasts, and today they do it on the computer here. So anyway, Jeff Epstein's lawyers have entered a proposal for a bail package, and that would allow Jeff Epstein to stay out of jail pending his trial. And they're saying he will live in home detention in his plush Upper East Side mansion, which is one of the largest residences in Manhattan. It's valued at $77 million. Now they're going to put him under electronic monitoring by GPS. He has to post a substantial personal recognizance bond secured by his Manhattan home. In other words, if he breaks that bond, he will lose that $77 million mansion. Of course, he's a billionaire. To him, that's not that much money. Now, prosecutors are saying Epstein needs to be detained without bail until his trial, and the bail hearing is set for Monday. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and what strings are being pulled to get Epstein out of the jail and possibly out of the country as well, because there's a lot of people do not want him in that court talking about what's going on. Okay, getting on back to the statement released by Bill Clinton's spokesperson. Bill Clinton claimed he knew nothing about Epstein's crimes and said that he really didn't start, talking with Epstein until 2002. Unfortunately, Fox News has uncovered evidence showing that President Bill Clinton dined with Jeff Epstein back in 1995. Now, let's be fair here. It could be that Bill Clinton is having a senior moment. We know that the pilot logs that were entered as evidence back in 2008 show that he was on there. And a photograph has surfaced of Bill Clinton hugging an underage Rachel Chandler, $3.5 million from a Swiss bank account. This is all leaked by a whistleblower. And apparently back then, this was such a problem. Hillary Clinton actually considered not running for president because also included the allegation she saw Bill Clinton on Epstein's orgy island. And she said, she asked Jeffrey Epstein, what's Bill Clinton doing here? And he kind of laughed it off and said, well, he owes me a favor. Now, Alan Dershowitz, I guess, is concerned that something is going to come on out because he's now admitting he got a massage at the orgy island. but he's insisting it was from this old Russian woman, and he kept his underwear on. And if you believe that one, I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you, because Epstein isn't the sort to keep old women of any kind around. In fact, there was one of the stories that came on out where one of his young lady friends, on her 19th birthday, he basically kicked her out because all of a sudden she was too old for him. So I'm not buying that. And the only reason Dershowitz came out with that right now is possibly to head off another revelation. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, there's an interesting little article that came out of Natural News, and it's talking about how corporate media covered up for Jeff Epstein. And this goes back to Vicky Ward, who wrote an article on Jeff Epstein for Vanity Fair. And this was around the time Epstein was running the sex trafficking rings. And apparently Vanity Fair edited her piece and took out all mention of the island and the girls, and to basically, you know, not damage Epstein. And Ward is saying that she uncovered many. And apparently when she was interviewing him, that he seemed obsessed with the question about, you know, what do you have on the girls? What do you have on the girls? Didn't seem all that concerned about questions about his suspicious business activities, but he was definitely obsessing, what do you have about the girls? Anyway, after she filed a piece with Vanity Fair, she was told that Graydon Carter was cutting the testimony of Maria Farmer, her mother, and her sister from the piece, erasing all mention of these women who came forward with the Epstein's little private island, St. James, is very close to another much larger island called St. Thomas, and apparently quite a few of the staff that takes care of Epstein's home are boated over from there. Now, they're all required to sign these very long non-disclosure agreements, but people whisper, and apparently it was an open secret on St. Thomas what was going on. Everybody there was calling it Pedophile Island. And they're a little bit ashamed about it. But so the stuff tends to get out. Now, of course, Alex Acosta is still trying to figure out some way that he can justify that sweetheart non-prosecution plea bargain back in 2008. And apparently, former Palm Beach County State's Attorney Barry Krischer says that Acosta's account of the 2008 plea arrangement his office cut with Epstein is completely wrong. He says Acosta is trying to rewrite history. Now, when Acosta had his press conference yesterday, I think it was, he vehemently defended the deal to serve just 13 months in county jail, saying that Krishner would have let Epstein walk otherwise. And Krishner has now come out and say, no, absolutely not. There was a 53-page indictment that deserved to be prosecuted. So Acosta is out there trying to put the blame on somebody else right now here. Apparently there was this letter from Acosta's assistant U.S. attorney to Epstein's attorney, basically indicating that Acosta's team literally bent over backwards for Epstein. And there was a letter that came back from Epstein's attorney thanking Acosta for not talking with any of the abuse victims, for not naming them publicly, for working to keep it out of the media here. And as a result, Epstein got this deal. He pled guilty to these state-level charges. He served 13 months in a county jail, and it wasn't even really full-time. He had to sleep at the county jail at night, but he was allowed to leave on work release 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So Acosta has a lot to answer for here. So I think we had a caller who called in yesterday about this, along with Acosta cutting Epstein this sweetheart deal over pedophilia. Apparently he's also cutting the budget for sex trafficking. And since coming to office, Acosta has attempted to dramatically cut the budget for government efforts to combat child sex trafficking. He's cut it by about 80%. That's 80%, according to The Guardian. Now, Trump said it as a matter of policy for the administration that child sex trafficking was going to be dealt with. And here you have Acosta basically undermining it using the power of the purse. All right, we're going to have to do a correction on a correction, because we had somebody who wrote in yesterday and said that the Stephen Hawking that was reported to have been on Epstein's Orgy Island wasn't the physicist, but was this very famous Olympic gold medal winning Australian athlete. Well, as it turns out, yes, it was the physicist, Stephen Hawking, and photos have surfaced of Hawking at Epstein's Island, and the pictures show him at a barbecue on Little St. James. Get into it, Hawking had never been underwater before, so that must have been a real treat for him. And Jeffrey got a lot to answer for, but you get an atta person for that one. You definitely get an atta person for that one. Okay, former Democratic New York Assemblyman Dov Hikind, relying on the recent precedent in a ruling against Donald Trump, filed a lawsuit against Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for blocking him on Twitter. Now, Tuesday, a federal appeals court ruled that the president is not allowed to block people on the social media platform because his account amounts to a public forum and is therefore protected by free speech under the First Amendment. And so the New York Assemblyman has now filed as to why the First Amendment doesn't apply to what we post on Facebook or Google or YouTube. Is they're private businesses. They're not subject to the Bill of Rights. Well, so's Twitter. Twitter's a private company. This judge just opened up a huge can of worms to say that, yes, corporate social media is a public forum and the First Amendment does apply. And it really should apply, because they are public forums. And they have become a major part of how America communicates with each other. And right now we're seeing all these abuses where there's this filtering going on. Conservatives being filtered out, vaccine criticisms being filtered out, concerns about GMO being filtered out. Probably they're starting to filter out doubts about human-caused global warming. It's all the official story, Okay, we're going to do a phone call now from Joe in California. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Mike, I must say your listeners have a great understanding and knowledge of what's going on in Donald Trump's head and heart. Yesterday, I believe it was James in Tokyo, said that he spoke to Donald Trump's best friend, and he told James that Donald Trump was a good man and a tough guy. So, that's all I need to hear. I think we should name Trump president for life.
I don't think so.
It's becoming a joke.
It really is.
People James is a good guy. I like his phone calls. He's always very insightful, but I think that was just, it wasn't
he's
worthy
definitely
of one of his
Donald Trump.
Yeah, it wasn't worthy of one of his phone calls. But Mike, just wanted to leave you with this. I think you're a much better person than I am, because I have no sympathy for Angela Merkel if she is sick, if she is ill. This may be, who knows, a campaign to gain sympathy from the many Germans who hate her guts, the many Europeans who hate her guts. But here's a woman who is all in on the Kalergi plan to transform the demographics of Europe's population. She brought in these hordes, millions, at least 1 million migrants into Germany, and sat back and did nothing while these same migrants, many of them committed horrible crimes against the German people. And then her government then ordered the media in Germany not to reveal the ethnicity of these perpetrators. So I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for this woman. The sooner she leaves this earth, the better we all will be.
Well, I don't, I'm very nervous about saying anybody leaving the earth here. And like I said, that's a function of my age here and the fact that I went to far too many funerals this last year. I don't agree with what Merkel is doing. I disagree with her politically. As far as her faking this medical situation to try and win votes, that's going to backfire on her because it's basically going to be another reason for Germans to vote her out of office. Because they're going to see her as weak and infirm and possibly not able to sustain the stresses and strains of the job.
Yeah. Oh, Mike, last thing. You mentioned at the end of yesterday's show the cartoonist Garrison was invited to the White House. He was actually disinvited.
Yes, now he's been disinvited over claims that he's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, he did a cartoon, rather good, I may say, with showing Rothschild as the chief puppet master, below Rothschild Soros, and then below Soros the U.S. military. Yeah,
and it was a good cartoon, but of course it was denounced as it's anti-Semitic, and Trump caved in on that and disinvited him, which I think is a horrible insult and an injustice.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Joe from Tennessee, Trump's chief backer, what he thinks about that. These are the people that supported Trump in 2016. But I guess he'll
Ben Garrison was right out there at the forefront. With his cartoons, he was a major force in favor of Donald Trump and against Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely.
Trump has just shown a tremendous amount of ingratitude by doing this.
Absolutely. Oh, and one last thing, Mike. I really like Art from Canada. I believe that's his name, Art from Canada. He has some good things to say. But Art, enough with the Islam. I'm sick of it. Focus on the real enemy, Art, Zionism. That is the real enemy, the real evil ideology of this world, not Islam. Islam is just being used by the Zionists. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And by the way, it's Al in Canada, and Art is off the grid here. Okay, interestingly enough, we got to take a break for commercials. Interestingly enough, we'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, Republic Broadcasting needs you. And they need your help. We don't have corporations supporting us. We don't have grants given to us by shadowy NGOs, which is why we have the freedom to tell you what we think the truth is. So if you can help out, please do. The postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit card or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here, starting with Paul in New Jersey. Aloha, Paul. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Michael, concerning Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
For one, I got to look at that building he put up over there. It looks like a temple down in his island.
Yes.
And I got to admit, it's tacky. I mean, if you got all those billions of dollars, please, if you're going to build a temple to sacrifice children in or for your sex rituals, make it at least classy and aesthetic.
Well, we don't know what the temple was for. I mean, that's one of the bits of bogus information that's being floated around, that it was a Satanist temple and they were doing sacrifices. Epstein is a devout Jew, and he may have just felt he wanted some place, to do his prayers in. In any event, it's been torn down.
Well, obviously, he's aesthetically challenged because that is just the tackiest looking building. I've seen better looking Dairy Queens than that thing. It's It's really a hideous building.
I don't
I don't know
recall
what
ever seeing a Dairy Queen with a golden dome on top. I've got to be very honest with you about that.
But golden domes really are they're kind of out. They ask the Romans how to do a dome. They'll do it right for you.
Yes.
All right, please. It's if you're going to do it. Now, listen, part of this, when I analyze this, I got to be honest. There's a bit of a white supremacy element here in the sense that these men are all conspiring or whatever they're up to when they're flying to a remote island. And it's basically for white young ladies, because if you just go a little east, or west actually of that island, right there is the Dominican Republic, and like guys like Menendez and Rush Limbaugh, remember, caught with his Viagra at the airport, seem to go on their little sex junkets there, but probably not with white girls. Likewise, lots of sailors and the rest of the people in the world, they go to Thailand as for the mecca of men with erectile function, going on sex junkets and looking for young women at their disposal. So I think there's an element that harkens back to like the early 1900s white sex slavery kind of myth being brought up out of this. And it seems like there's a thing for the blonde young girls down there.
Yes. Well, that appears to be Epstein's personal taste.
Yeah, and what I find disturbing about these guys, and really, it's stupid. It's really stupid. Because, listen, what you can do is, if you like girls who are very young, right?
Yeah.
You can find yourself an 18-year-old girl who is smaller and slight of frame. And she'll look like, because there are 18-year-old girls who look like they're 13, and then there are 13-year-old girls who look like they're 18. So there really is something mentally ill about these guys.
I
why
agree.
They just didn't arrange to have 18-year-old girls. And, if you want to hand them a lollipop and put pigtails on them, do that and pretend. But just do it legally. And as far as I know, I believe Epstein's Island falls under U.S. Jurisdiction because it's part of the U.S. Virgin Islands. So it's within American territory.
Well, see, here's the problem. Here's the problem. If, in fact, Epstein was running a blackmail operation, then fixing up all these world leaders and politicians with 18-year-old girls, it's not that effective a leverage, especially when you're dealing with somebody like Bill Clinton, who basically was attacking everything female that crossed his path. But if you have photos and videos of somebody having sex with a provable underage girl, that is a very, very powerful motivator, shall we say.
That's true, but you would think these guys, especially the Dershowitzes and the Clintons who went to law school, one of the first things you would do and know about law is who you can date and where you can date and where it's legal to have intercourse with ladies and which age group. And that's what's despicable about these guys never letting their guard down. And this goes.
Well, I think they were all morons for showing up in the first place here. Anyway, Paul, we got to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Rick in Arizona. Aloha, Rick. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing today, Mike? How am I coming in?
You're coming in just fine.
I was listening yesterday. I saw Fred from Arizona called in and agreed with me that the Democrats are forcing you to vote for Trump. Well, the Hegelian dialectic or something. As far as Epstein goes, this is classic, right out of the book of Jewish mafia extortion. You could probably read about this in Victor Ostrovsky's book, By Way of Deception, Thou Shalt Do War. It's legal in Israel to hold a woman for prostitution against her will.
I was not aware of that.
That is true. This has got Maxwell's daughter involved, I read the book on Maxwell. Maxwell got rich by stealing all the scientific journals out of Germany after World War II.
Yes.
That's where he made his initial bread money. So Epstein, the name Epstein in the Jewish community is a criminal name. You got Brian Epstein that took 5 years to put him in prison for killing that girl in his foyer in California.
Yep.
You got Baruch Epstein, who killed all those Palestinians. Got a Major Epstein in New York, who's a lawyer to the mafia that we don't hear about in the media. That is a criminal name. I guarantee you, if this guy is allegedly ends up dead, I want to see the body. I want to see the blood dripping from his neck, because he'll be roasting. He'll be barbecuing with Ariel Sharon on the Mediterranean.
Yes.
Along with Bernie Madoff.
Yes.
You really think Bernie Madoff is in an American prison? I don't. And
well,
I don't think
apparently
Bernie
he
Madoff
was there long enough to get into a fist fight with Jonathan Pollard and get a nice black eye.
Well, I'm just saying is, and another thing is, Michael Collins Piper claims that Jack Ruby whisked away to Israel and died in Israel. So we don't have an extradition treaty with these people, and I would just like to see who gets hung on this deal. Are these people that are going to get in trouble over this? Are they the peaceniks? Are these the people that don't want to go to war against Iran? This is an Israeli operation. Mark my words. I'm pretty right about this stuff, but this all of a sudden pops up a month after we don't go to war with Iran. So we'll see how this plays out, but don't believe any of this crap that somebody kills Epstein or he hangs. Because he gets to prison, people in prison are going to want favors from him. Nobody's going to kill him. And these aren't little children. These ain't 6 and 7 year olds. These are Brooke Shield type women, 12 and 13 and 14-year-old girls who would do something to a donkey on the Sunset Strip for a screen test. That's who these girls are. Okay.
Well, some of them are, but let's be honest, a lot of them were runaways, a lot of them were homeless, and they were basically picked up and groomed by Epstein's pimp.
You got to be, if you're homeless, Mike, you're circulating high in a group of people that, not even rich kids from ordinary cities can't get close to. Okay, so I'm just saying is, in my opinion, this is a full-blown Israeli operation, and don't believe anything you hear about Epstein getting killed.
Israel may well be involved, but I would not rule out the participation of the CIA.
Well, either way, this is classic mafia extortion. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, you got it. We're going to switch over to Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hello, Mike. The previous caller spoke about the Jewish mafia. It kind of reminded me of the Purple Gang. Wasn't the Purple Gang didn't they put out a contract out on Joe Kennedy Sr.?
I don't remember that far back. They may have. I honestly do not know.
Yeah, I read about that. Yeah, but the reason why I'm calling is I read that Japan sent a space station to the moon. I would like to know when is going to be the next manned space flight to the moon. When is that going to occur?
Well, if Trump has his way, probably sometime in the next 4 years. And apparently NASA just had a major shakeup to try and get the moon project back on track. The former head of the moon program has been demoted, and they're just shuffling people around here. I'm still waiting for a phone call offering me the top job at NASA. But I think that joke I made about the dressing up like monkeys has probably killed the job for me.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are now open here. And again, we need to stick with what we know, and we need to stop guessing, because guessing makes things worse. And I'm also taken aback by all the violent images that some of the callers are talking about. I understand that if Epstein is reported to be dead, that we would like to see some hard proof of that. There was some doubt whether Timothy McVeigh was actually executed. Ken Lay, of course, by this time he may have died of natural causes. But yeah, the people who want Epstein silenced are desperate. And he probably has got dead man switches all over the place, so they can't just off him. So the warning has simply gone on out. You find a way to get me out of this, or I'm going to start ratting people out. Okay, so getting on over to the Mueller investigation, if you can call it that. Mueller, of course, has been pushing this Russiagate claim of sweeping and systematic Russian meddling in the 2016 elections. And it just got shot down again. A federal judge ruled that his indictment of a troll farm is not actual proof of it. Now, Mueller had accused Concord Management and Consulting, the Russian company accused of running a troll farm and sowing discord on U.S. social media in 2016, but could not establish a link between that private company and the Russian government, according to U.S. District Judge Dabney L. Friedrich. They probably were working for a private contractor here. And basically, Mueller was in breach of prosecutorial rules, because an allegation is not proof. An assertion is not evidence. Mueller's report said that Concord CEO Yevgeny Prigozhin is, quote, is widely reported to have ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Well, that's hearsay evidence right there, and it's not admissible. So the federal judge has issued a significant rebuke of this core Mueller claim. And apparently there's been an attorney over at the Department of Justice who's come on out and said that no, it didn't happen. The Russian troll farms had absolutely nothing connected with the Russian government. Now here's what's really interesting. Judge Friedrich's ruling was issued on May 28th. Was only unsealed on the 1st of this month, and of course the corporate media paid no attention to it whatsoever. All right, so let's turn to the international news. There's a lot going on over there, and once again we're seeing the spin doctors at work, okay, because the United States came on out with this claim that 5 armed Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps boats in the Persian Gulf unsuccessfully tried to seize a British oil tanker. Now, of course, Iran has denied that. And apparently there was a close encounter between the boats where a British warship basically headed them all off. But after screaming about how, oh, Iran tried to take the tanker, Britain came out with their own report saying merely that the boats impeded the tanker, that they got in the way. Now, Britain is calling on its tankers in the Strait of Hormuz to boost their security because of the possibility that something bad might happen. And the insurance rates for Middle East oil tankers have gone up tenfold as a result of all the stress and tension. And that means that oil prices are going to go up. Gasoline prices are going to go up. Meanwhile, Iranian Minister of Culture and Social Affairs Hossein Nejat has issued a warning that Iran can strike American bases in the Middle East and destroy U.S. aircraft carriers if the United States attacks Iran. And he was out there saying American bases are within the range of our missiles. Our missiles will destroy their carriers if they make a mistake. Americans are very well aware of the consequences of a military confrontation with Iran. And it might sound like idle boasting until you go back and look at those reports where apparently the U.S. military command and the Pentagon are scratching their heads and saying, we're not sure we can make this work. Now, we know right now that there are missiles out there on the world market that can kill a carrier. They're too fast, they're too maneuverable. The American defense systems can't stop them because they're built basically around an incoming sea-skimming missile that's following a straight line path and below a certain speed. Now, John Bolton is out there still screaming about how Iran has got a nuclear weapons program. Iran's got a nuclear weapons program, which we've heard before so many times. And there's no evidence of. But it turns out that John Bolton received $165,000 from the Counter-Extremism Project, which overlaps with a group called United Against Nuclear Iran. Now, according to Bolton's disclosures, the payments were consulting fees, but basically he has been financially incentivized to scream about Iran's nuclear weapons. Yet another deception that we're hearing right now, and this is from the original antiwar.com, is all this talk about Iran is killing U.S. troops in Iraq. And that's being used to push for war. So Bolton and Pompeo are saying that Tehran is responsible for the killing of more than 600 U.S. troops during the Iraq War. And you got to go back and remember how they lied to us about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. This is just more lies. It's more lies to sell you on another war that you will pay for, that your children will get killed and crippled in. Over in Yemen, the Yemeni armed forces, using a domestically manufactured ballistic missile, the Badr-F, killed dozens of Saudi mercenaries in Najran. And apparently the missile hit the designated target with great precision, and it left 45 Saudi-paid militiamen killed, tens of others injured. The death toll is expected to further rise, as some of the injured are in critical condition. Now, speaking of missiles, the Russian S-400s have begun arriving in Turkey. And reportedly, they're being delivered at the eastern Anatolian city of Malatya, as well as Ankara. And Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov announced of the provocative transfer, which has for the past year been met with condemnation by the United States, including the threat of sanctions and blockage of F-35s to Turkey. It's basically saying deliveries of the Russian S-400 complexes to Turkey are carried out as plans. And from his past tense, it sounds to me like all of them have been delivered. Now, last Tuesday, the 9th, marked the 15th anniversary of the International Court of Justice decision that declared the Israeli separation wall in occupied Palestinian territory as illegal under international law. Now, Israel began construction of the wall in 2002 in the midst of the Second Intifada, claiming that it was a necessary security precaution against terrorism from Palestinian attackers coming from the West Bank. But the Intifada is over, and the wall is still up there. And of course, to build the wall, there were unprecedented demolitions of Palestinian homes, massive land confiscations, and the division of dozens of Palestinian communities along the Green Line. It really caused a huge amount of grief, as it were. Benjamin Netanyahu came on out the other day and issued this statement saying that Palestinians have no connection to Palestine, that they're descended from the Philistines, and the Philistines are actually from southern Europe, as proven by recent Israeli DNA research. And he came on out there and said that Jews have a much stronger connection to that land, which is interesting given that Netanyahu himself is descended from the Central Asian Khazars. But meanwhile, archaeologists on Twitter just kicked up a firestorm, tearing down the claims that Palestinians have no connection to their homeland. They have certainly been there for a very, very long time. I mean, this claim that they originally came from Southern Europe is going back thousands and thousands of years. And don't forget, there has been a great deal of fraud in Israeli science for political gain. Remember the Jehoash tablet, the temple pomegranate, staff ornament, various other things like that. Israel routinely will rig science to try and come up with something that they can say, see, this land belongs to us, not to you. Over in Germany, the Chinese military have deployed armored vehicles for the first time. They're in a joint drill. And this is a first for the Chinese People's Liberation Army as it attempts to forge closer ties with Europe. Now, the exercise, Combined Aid 2019, is focused on preparing troops with the medical service units of the Chinese and German armed forces to respond to humanitarian crises, such as mass casualty incidents and serious disease outbreaks. So they're out there playing with their little toys. North Korea has slammed South Korea over its ongoing deployment of high-tech U.S. fighter jets, meaning the F-35, warning Thursday that it will respond by developing and testing unspecified special weapons of its own to destroy the aircraft. Heck, they don't have to do that. Just wait. They'll fall out of the sky. All right, we got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And Donald Trump is on TV right now. It had been announced he was going to talk about some executive action regarding the citizenship question on next year's census, but instead he's launched into a speech about the soaring stock market. And apparently the Dow hit 27,000 today. And I always get very, very nervous when they treat the Dow like it's a sports score. You know, higher, 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 block the kick, block the kick. And so apparently he's wandered off script already on this one. Okay. The U.S. Navy and Lockheed Martin are officially introducing directed energy weapons into warfare. And apparently these are short-range defensive weapons to arm Navy ships to deal with the newer, faster missiles, maneuverable missiles. And it sounds all well and good. The problem, of course, is that both Russia and China have also deployed directed energy weapons. So it's getting to be like Star Wars out there here. Alrighty, this one affects us right here in Hawaii because this is about that giant floating radar platform, and it had been gone for a very, very long time, like a year, and all of a sudden about 2 weeks ago it shows up again in Pearl Harbor, and there's all kinds of scaffolding all over it, and it turns out that it's getting an upgrade. This is a $2 billion floating radar platform used to track ballistic missiles. It's returned to Hawaii for upgrades. But apparently the U.S. Missile Defense Agency is struggling to find uses for this thing as better land-based radars are built. So just think about what they're saying here. They've built this $2 billion floating radar. The land-based radars are better. So, hey, let's just pour money into this thing and see if we can get it up to par here, because it's not their money. So here in Hawaii, it's known as the golf ball ship, thanks to its spherical radome. I call it the bubble machine because there's multiple radomes on there, but it's parked down there in Pearl Harbor right now. Okay. Getting into the economic news here, and this is definitely the truth coming out of zerohedge.com. 2 years later, Trump has failed to reverse America's decline. And Trump was partly voted into office by Americans who felt that the self-proclaimed greatest power on earth was actually in decline. And of course, we are, and we have been for decades. And Trump is capable of tweeting whatever he wants to tweet, but none of those tweets will stop the process of decline, nor will a trade war with a rising China or fierce oil sanctions on Iran. And basically, what's going on, the rest of the world is starting to look at America differently. They don't see us as a positive influence on the world. All right, we got to take a break here for station identification. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before we get back to the phones, Donald Trump is now addressing the issue of the citizenship question. And he's saying the only question the government is not allowed to ask you on the census is, are you a citizen? And yet, if you go back and read that 14th Amendment, that is the one they're supposed to be asking. And it's a valid point. I mean, look how much the government knows about you. They spy on everything that you do, listen to your phone calls, read your emails, just scan all this data, and yet the Democrats are trying to make it illegal to ask if somebody's a citizen or not. Why? Because they're dependent on illegal immigrant voters to win the election next year. All right, let's go to the phones here. Terry in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, you think Jeffrey Epstein could be Israeli operative through the Mossad, and his job is to go over there and get as much dirt on he can?
He's somebody's operative here because apparently when Acosta was being vetted by the Trump transition team and he was asked about that sweetheart plea bargain, and Acosta said that, he was told, Epstein is intelligence, didn't get specific, and to basically back off. And that appears to be exactly what happened. So Epstein is somebody's spook. He may be spying for multiple clients. Israel, yes. CIA, yes. Who knows who all else?
Yeah, the CIA and the Mossad are like hand in glove,
Yes.
In fact, I would think that CIA is probably subordinate to the Mossad, but I don't know that for sure.
No,
anyway,
I think it's probably more of sort of a tense partnership.
Right, and they're both controlled by. Anyway, the gentleman that called before saying this could be an Israeli operation got me thinking about that. And I just wondered, have you heard of Senator Tom Udall from New Mexico is a Democrat. On April 4th, I introduced this Senate Bill 1039, and it's the Prevention of Unconstitutional War with Iran Act of 2019. Well, it hasn't come to the floor yet, and I think nobody wants it to come to the floor because their hand will be forced, and they don't want that. So
they're probably going to kill it in committee.
Right. So do you think maybe we might want to write our congressman, like I just did, actually my senator, supporting this bill and tell him that, this bill is really not, we shouldn't have to have this bill because it's explicit in the Constitution, the highest law of the land, that all wars will be debated in Congress, and Congress will either, support the war or kill it. It's not up to the executive branch.
No, but, it isn't, and it shouldn't be. But I think probably a lot of Americans are writing their members of Congress and saying, stop this nonsense. I think the reason that this bill that you're talking about will never get out of committee, as you said, it will force their hand. And we're coming up on elections next year. And for those senators who are, in fact, running for another term, support for any war, anywhere, whether it's Iran or Monaco or Antarctica, that's going to be a vote loser.
Right. But, this would, force their hand to vote against the president just going to war. It kind of puts the lid on war, where, so I think maybe people would, support the people that voted for this act. But,
well, if they voted for the act, but I'm basically thinking that if it actually got to a floor vote, it would get voted down.
Yeah, that's why it probably will never get there.
Yes.
Like you said.
Yeah, it'll die in committee.
Do you think it would help for? Do you think it would help for people to write to Congress, or their senators rather, and tell them support this bill? As 1039. It's worth a try.
It's worth a try. Certainly, it's worth a stamp, and I'm sure they're keeping track of how many letters come on these various issues. But right now, whoever is calling the shots in this country, it's not the Congress, and it's not even really the administration. It's the military-industrial complex and Israel, and they want war with Iran, and by golly, it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a sad thing. But, I think the Congress, the Senate and the House have both been compromised because they seem to be operating in direct opposition to what they were designed to do. Because every time I write one of them, and I've written all three in the last week, they always come back and kind of poo-poo in a nice way, my suggestion, no war, but they give all these reasons why there should be a war. So they're not working for the people. They're not our representatives that we send to Washington to represent us anymore.
Nope.
They're people that now have sided with the powers to be, and they get back to the people that they're supposed to represent and keep them under hoofs. They just keep them down. They tell them every reason why our letters to them are really not right. That they should we should look at these other things. And there's some of the arguments are so ridiculous. It's the same old line. They say, Iran's the biggest exporter of terrorists in the war in the world, and all these other lies. Like Senator Thune wrote me the other day saying that. That spy drone was over international waters. I mean, he didn't give any explanation why he said that, but he just said it dictates it. They dictate things to you. Like Iran is the biggest exporter of terrorism. They just dictate it.
Yeah,
they don't say why. They don't say anything else.
It's just more of the same lies, and they just keep repeating the lies over and over in the hope that repetition is just going to sell the idea. And if you want to talk about the biggest exporters of terror, I would say probably Israel and the United States are up there tied for first place.
Saudi Arabia is a close second. That statistic you just quoted about all the U.S. troops that got killed by Iranians,
yes.
in the Iraq war. I think they might be counting every Shia group in Iraq, like the Mahdi Army and all them, and just say that's Iran doing it when it's really not. It's friends of Iran, and they're doing it on their own, or they might have gotten help from Iran, but they might be,
or they're just making this stuff up out of thin air.
Could be. All right, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates rejoining the network. Back to the phones to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I heard a caller previously refer to Thailand and underage sexual travels there, as well as the Dominican Republic. I go to Thailand all the time. I used to have an apartment there. And I'm telling you, it has a reputation that's really unearned. I mean, you do see underage sex in the gays. I mean, with young Thai boys and gay Westerners. But young Thai women, I mean, if you want to go end up in the monkey house, that's a great way to end up there. I mean, they'll set you up in a minute. So you really have to have your head examined to even think that way in Thailand. They're very protective of the girls over there.
Plus, so, it's the disease
it's not like Czechoslovakia. Huh?
I said, plus you've got to risk the disease of the month club.
Well, yeah, it's like, there's all kinds of, setups over there. You really got to be careful. First of all, you're not in your own country. And people there, the police or the, notorious people, even the parent will set you up. And then next thing you know, you're in prison and you're getting shaken down and bad things are happening to you and they bleed your family. And so you really have to be crazy to even think about that. And it's really, if you hang out in the go-go bars or whatever, those girls all are like, they're not underage. So, but anyway, you know, the thing about this whole sexual issue is like it's all over in Europe. I mean, Eastern Europe was the big place to go back in the 90s. You know, Czechoslovakia. I mean, that was the big joke. Who the guys would get out of college and go there and have a 14 to 16-year-old girlfriend. So it's not just Thailand. It's not just Dominican Republic. You know, as a matter of fact, I mean, it was all over Europe. So, you know, I think my whole angle with this whole thing with Epstein is the satanic issues. I think they're involved. The ritual abuse, the fact that these are like, you know, these women are being raped and groomed, and how much of this is that MK Ultra involved in this and these sex kitten operations? I mean, this is really this is like intelligence service stuff written all over it.
Yep.
I mean, up and down. And I don't know, like you know, anytime a scandal's this large and this huge, how much are they going to let out, you know? You know, we still haven't gotten the truth on the Kennedy assassination. So I just hope the more, you know, the more of this comes out, the better. But, you know, we'll see. But
I agree it should come out, but I think most of it will remain under wraps. And, you know, the CIA has a long history of using sex in all of its forms for its operations. During, you were talking about MK Ultra, they actually had an operation called Midnight Climax, and that was the name of the operation, where they literally set up a bondage parlor overlooking San Francisco Bay. And they hired a bunch of prostitutes, put them on staff, and they lured unsuspecting civilians back to this bondage parlor, trying to find just the right combination of kinky sex and drugs that would cause the customers to just spill the beans about their everything. It turned out not to work. It ran on for 9 years until finally the plug got pulled.
Yeah, and just in ending here, on you know, one time I had to catch a ship. I had to fly into Hollywood, Florida for an overnight before I went to Trinidad the next morning. And I was staying in this motel, and the next morning when I was checking out, I would just watch like all these like young girls, one after another, coming out of those hotel rooms and getting into taxis and stuff. And I'm thinking, my God, you know, I want to talk about underage prostitution in this country. People like to slander like Thailand and the Philippines and these Southeast Asian countries, when they've never ever been there. You know, they don't know. I've been there. I have a house in the Philippines. I know. You know, it's there. You know, you want to talk about getting in trouble. I think you're more likely to get in a lot of trouble over there if you're into that than you are in this country. I mean, how many people really end up going to getting in any trouble here? It seems like it's just a slap on the wrist.
Yes.
And they let them go. Over there, you're gonna do some serious time. It's gonna destroy your life. So this idea, like, yes, it is a bit like, you know, wide open as far as bars can be. Some bars are open all night long, but technically prostitution is not legal in Thailand, and it's not legal in the Philippines neither. It is legal in the Dominican Republic, and I think it's illegal in Czechoslovakia and some of those Eastern European countries. So I think some of these people have they don't really know what they're talking about. And it's part of the, you know, they try to demonize these countries because they don't fit in with our Western ideals. And, you know, Thailand is a man's country. I mean, it's definitely set up, you know, it's old-fashioned in that respect. But, you know, they're modest people. You go to the beach and you see women with their boobs hanging out. They're going to be European women. They're not going to be Thai women. You know, so there's a lot of misconceptions, and I really think people should learn them. Maybe look into their own, like, backgrounds or the countries that they favor, like, you know, Eastern Europe, and find out about the degeneracy that was Czechoslovakia. I just would like that message to get out. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dan in Illinois. Aloha, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I've been doing a lot of YouTube searches throughout the day, and if people look like at True News, or I just looked at one, it was by a lady called Amazing Polly. These people are going in depth with documents about Jeffrey Epstein and his past way back into the 80s. The information is out there. people need to look for it instead of just speculating and complaining about just having to be able to speculate. These guys, like I said, True News and Amazing Polly, and there's other ones too, that have in-depth documented reports and news articles about him and all the stuff that he has been doing. So people got to look instead of just saying, nobody knows, it's, blah, 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 like that. Do the research. It's out there, and you can find it.
Okay, well, yeah, people need to do their own research and probably have to do it quickly, because right now I imagine the entire internet is being scrubbed of anything that's related to Epstein and his shenanigans, because it's generating a lot of fear in the power elite.
Well, yeah, it's like I said, the one is Rick Wiles and True News, and the young lady that I was just watching before I called is Amazing Polly. And I mean, I can't explain how in-depth that she was. I mean, she had articles about him from back in the 80s, about the stuff he was doing at Bear Stearns and everything like that.
Yes.
So, and you got to wonder, after he got let go from Bear Stearns and he was tied into AIG, what happened to those two companies?
Well, after he left Bear Stearns, he started his own company.
Yeah, but they were doing stuff, and I think that they got caught up in his crap, and they had to end up folding because they had it's just a whole big web of Epstein and his corruptness that just is all through the markets and all through the financial institutions. That's all I can say is just look the stuff up, and you can find it. And it takes time to watch the videos, but that's a little bit of Candy Crush you can't play for a while. Watch these videos, and you'll find out a lot about this guy. I'll let you go.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Dan. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open now. Over at Deutsche Bank, boy, when it rains, it pours. And as you know, they had these huge layoffs, biggest mass layoffs since Lehman Brothers. And now the U.S. government is coming along with another potential criminal investigation, this time over Deutsche Bank's involvement with the Malaysian development fraud scandal that brought down a prime minister, crippled Goldman Sachs and stock, and stretched from Hollywood to Wall Street. And so according to the Wall Street Journal, the Department of Justice is investigating whether the German bank violated foreign corruption or anti-money laundering laws in its work for the 1MDB fund, which included helping the fund raise $1.2 billion in 2014, as concerns about the fund's management and financials had begun to circulate. So a lot of crookedness over there among the money people here. Over in New York City, pre-foreclosures are spiking, according to a new Property Shark analysis. And on a quarter-over-quarter basis, they're up an astounding 31%. And analysis for New York indicates the city saw 3,070 properties entering pre-foreclosure for the first time in the second quarter. And according to the report, foreclosures are likely to increase in coming quarters based on these numbers. So it's all coming apart here. Alrighty, over in China, the largest supplier of consumer goods in the world, China's Li and Feng, has said Chinese factories are becoming urgent and desperate as U.S. retailers move out of the country amid the ongoing trade war. We have to take another break for commercials. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Chinese auto stocks have plunged in Hong Kong after Geely slashes the 2019 net profit by 40%. 40%. Now, looking at China's stock market, where it is heading down, the indications are that China does not see a deal coming in this ongoing trade war. And a lot of people were saying, you know, they wanted to wait and say what Fed Chair Jerome Powell was going to say to Congress. And actually what he did is he tried to make an argument against a return to the gold standard, saying that that's not the Fed's job to stabilize the currency. They're there to do other things. Basically, he's serving his own interests. If we had a gold standard, there's no need for a central bank, and Powell would be out of a job. So one of the reasons bank reform is so difficult is because the banks don't want to change anything that will result in their own unemployment here. Okay, over in Seattle, there is a chain of restaurants called Restaurants Unlimited. They have locations in 47 U.S. cities, and they are going into bankruptcy, claiming that minimum wage hikes basically drove it over the edge. All right. Standard & Poor's 500's second quarter earnings expectations continue to slide. And Manhattan home prices are falling at the fastest rate since GFC. The signs are all negative here. Now, everyone talks about scarcity of certain things like oil, metals, resources, but there are other commodities that are in short supply and nobody's paying attention. Helium, for one. I mean, helium is a very common element out there in the universe. It's just not common here on Earth. It's a byproduct of nuclear decay deep in the Earth's crust. And it comes to the surface usually mixed with natural gas, and it's actually very expensive to separate it, which is why helium prices have gone up something like 150% over the last couple of years. Believe it or not, something else that we're running out of is sand, because so much of it is used for cement and concrete construction. And I know everybody looks at places like here in Hawaii and, oh, look at all that sand. But believe it or not, a few years ago, Hawaii actually had to import sand for the beaches to deal with the erosion. And natural occurring beach sand is actually the remains of coral that is being eaten by the reef fish. And they'll bite off a chunk of coral, they'll suck out the pulp, and what's left over becomes the sand. But if you've got a lot of tourism activity, you've got a lot of erosion, it will wash away. And finally, the other element that is now in short supply is phosphorus, which is used in things like matches, not to mention weapons of war. So the indications are definitely not good, and looking at this article coming out of Investment Watch blog, nearly a quarter of Americans don't plan to retire. 25%. That used to be part of the American dream. You know, you'd go to school, you'd get a job, you'd buy a house, the house would build equity. When you reached retirement age, that equity became your retirement nest egg. Not happening anymore. Most houses with mortgages right now are underwater. Apparently over at Amazon, their employees actually need food stamps to live. That's how poorly they are being paid. The wealth inequality is just, it's completely out of control. You know, it's one thing to have somebody who's out of work who needs food stamps. But we have people who are working a full-time job needing food stamps. You have people up at places like Google who are working full-time and still having to live out of their cars. What's wrong with this picture? Now, up in San Francisco, the homeless count goes from bad to worse, jumping 30% since 2017. And over the last several months, cities and counties across California have been releasing the latest homeless counts. And the numbers are very, very grim. And the count revealed that homelessness in San Francisco, which is sort of a caricature of wealth inequality in the U.S., had actually increased 30% over the time the last count had been taken. Down in Los Angeles, residents and business owners are now starting to take drastic steps to try and keep the homeless people away from their properties. They're putting out planters with prickly plants, cactuses, so that the homeless can't lie down there and sleep. And I understand their concern with the homeless people being a detriment to business. But again, where are these people going to go? Where are they going to live? And how can we have so much homelessness in what is supposed to be one of the richest countries on earth? Okay, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the phones to Dee in Minnesota. Aloha, Dee. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Long time no talk to.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Immigration. Did you see in Congress that lady testified about her kid dying?
Yes.
And now she's going to sue the government.
I don't
She's suing the federal government now.
I mean, that's utterly ridiculous. She's the one who made the choice to bring that kid into this country illegally.
I agree. But I just wondered if you'd heard that.
Yes, I'd heard that.
And then my question is, okay, so if she sues and we have to pay her, what does that say to people whose kids die in CPS custody? It happens all the time.
Yeah, it does.
So should we be able to sue the government?
We should be able to.
I mean, that's how ridiculous this is. We can't even sue. And we're Americans. I mean, wow. Iran, that looks like Iraq 2.0.
Yeah, it does. Except that Iran will not be the pushover that Iraq was.
Yeah, I mean, if he does that, he's going to unleash the gates of hell. And it won't be good.
Nope.
It'll be a bad day.
It'll be another Syria. It'll be another Afghanistan.
He's sending more troops to Syria, too. That was on the news.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yep.
Why is he sending more troops to Syria? What's the logic?
The logic is they don't want to have to admit that they lost there. So as long as they can keep sending in troops, they can say, well, we may not have won, but we haven't lost, and therefore the war agenda is still on track. It's like the situation up in Afghanistan. To any objective outside observer, the United States got lost, and they're being handed their hat. But the U.S. is out there saying, we're negotiating a dignified withdrawal of our forces from Afghanistan. No, they're leaving the way that the Soviet Union had to.
Yep, they got their butts beat, and they're just going home. I mean, after a while, you just got to. But they can't admit they got their butts kicked.
That's right.
So and how is he going to fight a war with Iran? He can't even finish the ones he's got.
That's true, and that may be one of the reasons why so many of the Pentagon brass are out there saying this is not a good idea to start a war with Iran right now. The U.S. military is stretched very thin. They're all over the globe. We have 7 officially acknowledged wars and probably another 50, 60 covert actions going on. We're garrisoning something like 750 bases around the world, all of which is absorbing vast sums of money. Our stockpiles are drawn down. The latest weapons coming out of the military-industrial complex are junk, very costly junk, but still junk.
Yeah. How do they get the government to buy this stuff? Doesn't even work.
Well,
Didn't anybody test this stuff?
Well, there's all kinds of testing, but very often it's rigged. And again, there's a movie that you should look at called The Pentagon Wars. It's a comedy directed by Richard Benjamin, and it's based on the true story of the development of the infantry, the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. And it basically illustrates how this all works. And it's all about the money, and it's all about kickbacks, and it's all about the officers in charge of weapons procurement looking forward to a nice, cozy consulting job with the defense contractors after they retire from military service, and they're allowed to double dip along with their pensions.
Nice. Who is that Israeli guy that said any marriage to a diaspora Jew was a second Holocaust?
I don't remember his name.
Some Israeli dude. I saw it on the news.
Yeah, we had it on
yesterday. I saw it on RT.
We had it on whatreallyhappened.com, I think 2 days ago. It was some rabbi, but I don't remember the name.
Yeah, he was some government official rabbi, I guess, or something. But how? I mean, that takes a lot of nerve.
Yes.
To take our money, to expect our kids to die, and then to tell everybody that marrying a non-Jew is a second Holocaust.
And he specifically singled out the
takes a
United
lot of
States of
nerve.
America as being the worst quote-unquote offender.
Oh, yeah. And you know, that is true. I actually met a couple when I was at the Occupy Wall Street. He was an Israeli Jew. She was an American. They got married. They had to come over here to get married. And the guy had a heck of a time getting over here because they were saying a bunch of stuff he did or whatever. He eventually got here, him and his wife, and they were trying to get his legal status situated, but our government in Israel kept playing games with the whole thing, and they weren't sure what to do. But the guy wasn't so bad. He seemed like a cool guy.
Well,
He didn't like
the problem was
he
that
didn't like what they were doing.
the problem was that he's a guy, because under Jewish tradition, if a Jewish man marries a non-Jewish woman, that's a big tacky no-no. It's a horrible, horrible thing. But if a Jewish woman
Isn't that racist?
marries a of course it is. If a Jewish woman marries a non-Jewish man, it's considered bringing him into the tribe, and that's actually approved of.
Huh, okay. I didn't know it worked like that. I thought it was you just couldn't marry a non-Jew.
Well, that's what
From the
this
way
guy
it
is
sounded.
saying. That's what this guy's saying. He said
Yeah.
it's even wrong for Jewish women to marry non-Jewish men.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because you can go to Saudi Arabia, which is one of the worst theocracies on this planet. Guy or girl, you can go there and marry anybody you want. You just got to conform with their Islamic law. That's all.
Yep.
I mean, that's just sad. And we got to pay these people, and well, I guess they're grateful. They showed us, yes, a couple days ago, how grateful.
Yep. Not very. They've never been grateful.
No, well,
No matter what anybody does for Israel, they never show any gratitude. The attitude is, okay,
No,
that was nice. What have you done for me today?
and Trump seems to have done the most for him. He's done stuff that not even Bush or Clinton would do.
True.
Like that Jerusalem stuff, the Golan Heights business. No president before did that. Would even contemplate it. Does he think it's going to score him points or what?
Well, it certainly scores him points with, his Jewish backers, Sheldon Adelson and so forth, George Soros. Whether it's going to help him with the voters next year or not, I don't know. I think a lot of people are really getting fed up with being second-class citizens underneath Israel.
Yeah, I'm sick of it. And you hear almost all the candidates pledging their loyalty to Israel. I was considering Tulsi Gabbard. What is her stand on that?
I imagine that she's playing politics, and she's probably saying that, Israel is okay. The main reason why I think I like Tulsi Gabbard is I'm convinced that she truly is anti-war. Not that she would be able to do anything about it should she win the presidency. But right now at this point, I'm just not seeing anybody in the running that I really get all that excited about.
I don't either. I watched the debate, the first one, and she was the only one that we heard, and even my husband said that was actually talking any sense. Even talking some common sense. She was the only one.
Yes.
And I saw the second one with Biden and company in it, and I just couldn't watch it. I had to get up and go somewhere else. It was just so bad. God. It was horrible.
Well, they're starting
like,
to pare, they're starting to pare down the candidates.
More and more to the left.
Swalwell has stepped down, but now apparently there's another gentleman who says he's going to step in.
Yeah. Oh, he's going to step in?
Yeah.
Wow. Gia Ross Perot died.
Yes.
sad. He was a great man.
Well,
I voted for him in 92 and 96.
Yeah, I voted for him too.
Yeah.
He made a lot of sense. And
He did. Good
he was basically out there telling the truth about what was going wrong with the country, about where it was economically, and he didn't make any glowing promises of free stuff. He said, we're going to have to make some hard choices here to get this country back on track. And I think anybody who was really being honest would have heard that and said, yeah, we can't just keep on coasting like this and voting for the politician who promises to give us the most stuff.
Yeah, I was 19 at the time, and even I could disseminate that what he was saying had some truth to it.
Yep.
I mean, so yeah, I don't know that we're going to see another Ross Perot.
Well,
I don't think so.
That's a shame. Our entire political system has just become totally corrupted from top to bottom. It's infiltrated by Israel. It's infiltrated by organized crime. And I don't think an honest person really has a chance of getting anywhere in this government if they run for office.
Probably not. You either play ball or you get outed one way or another. Tulsi Gabbard, they're probably just going to Ron Paul her.
I imagine
give it
so.
to Warren or Biden.
I imagine so. Well, she's certainly
They did the same thing to Ron Paul.
She's certainly not going to get any donations from the military contractors.
Or Israel. Is there a way we can find out more about the candidates?
Well, I imagine there's some online resources here. I mean, you can go to their official campaign webpage, but of course you have no way of knowing if in point of fact what's on their campaign webpage is accurate or not. And yeah. So
okay. Well, I was just curious.
I'm in the middle of the radio show. I'll call you back. Okay.
Oh. Well, I'm. That's all I have. I'll let you go.
All right. Thanks an awful lot, Dee. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open. And the House Democrats are still out there trying to basically make it look like Donald Trump is personally responsible for the harsh treatment of the children at the border. And they put out this tweet promoting this hearing on Trump's border policies. Small goof, though. They used a photo depicting a migrant detention center under President Obama. So they deleted that one real quick. All righty. Now, here's an interesting little story. Apparently, Republican senators have introduced a bill allowing victims of crime by illegal immigrants to sue over the sanctuary city policies. In other words, if you're living in a city that's a sanctuary city, and you are the victim of a crime by an illegal immigrant who's being sheltered by the sanctuary city, you are allowed to sue the city. I mean, if you really think about it, they're accessories to the crime. Because they're committing a crime by allowing those people to be living there. It's a Title VIII violation here. Out in California, and this is getting really ridiculous out here, Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law State Bill 104, which now extends health care benefits to illegal immigrants between the ages of 19 to 25, in addition to the law that already had guaranteed coverage to illegal immigrants under the age of 19. Now, we, American citizens, we don't have health care benefits. We have to pay for it ourselves. We either have to have insurance or we have to pay for it out of our pocket. The illegal immigrants are getting better treatment than the U.S. citizens. And getting on back here to Hillary Clinton, as you've probably already heard, the mass deportations program gets underway this coming Sunday. And ICE is going to be going on out there to try and grab all of these illegal immigrants who are not supposed to be here and fling them back across the border. Hillary Clinton came on out posting instructions in Spanish. giving illegals legal advice on how to evade the ICE agents. And the instructions include telling illegals not to answer the door if ICE comes knocking on their door, letting them know they have the right to remain silent, and to not sign anything without talking to a lawyer. That's a Title VIII violation right there. Interesting little article came out of Russia today. Social justice snowflakes won't quit until the U.S. becomes a balkanized battlefield, or is it already? And they're talking about this incident that happened at a Starbucks in Tempe, Arizona, where apparently one of the customers felt unsafe because of the heavy police presence. Now, the police were just there having coffee, having a snack. That's it. And yet the manager of the Starbucks asked them to leave because the customer did not feel safe in their presence. It's resulted in a lot of people calling for a boycott of Starbucks. And I mean, how different things are. Just 10 years ago, they would have told the customer, look, the police officers are regular customers, and they have every right to be inside the shop too. But far more likely, nobody would have come on out and said, look, the cops are making me feel uncomfortable. But everybody's being conditioned to be offended or feel unsafe. We are turning into a snowflake generation, and we think we're going to win a war against Iran with these weak, milquetoast young people who cry when they get a splinter. It's just not going to happen. Okay. The British Foreign Office has banned Russian outlets, Russia Today and Sputnik, from attending the upcoming Global Conference on Media Freedom in London. Talk about hypocrisy. And the official reason being given is, of course, that Russia Today and Sputnik spread disinformation. And by golly, if anybody's going to spread disinformation, it's going to be us. All right, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're keeping an eye on what's going on with this citizenship issue. And Trump has apparently issued an order for every government department to turn over citizenship data. So they're trying desperately to basically get a handle on who is and is not a legal citizen of this country. And anyway, down in Brazil, last January, there was this horrible disaster when a tailings dam owned by a mining company, Vale SA, collapsed. Caused a huge amount of flooding, killed at least 240 people. And they've now basically been convicted for damages. And Judge Elton Pupo Nogueira ruled that Vale is responsible for fixing all of the damages and saying the value will not be limited to the dead, but also effects on the local and regional environment, in addition to economic activity in the affected regions. This might drive that mining company completely out of business. Out in California, a lot of people are very nervous. There have been more than 10,000 earthquakes in California and Nevada over the last week. Now, most of them are very, very small. They can't be felt. They have to be detected with a seismometer. But looking at Caltech's recent earthquake map, it's 10,053 quakes in California and Nevada. That is a very high number. Now, when I lived in Southern California, I paid attention to the Caltech maps because I'd been through some quakes, one really bad one. Now, most of the quakes, of course, are happening out in the Ridgecrest area, where they had the magnitude 6.4 quake that hit on July 4th and the 7.1 quake that hit on July 5th. But there's a lot of seismic activity along the San Andreas Fault as well, and that is what has people very, very nervous, because a lot of California's nuclear power plants are lined up along that San Andreas Fault. And yes, supposedly they have been built to withstand an earthquake. But a 7.1, we're not really sure. And, supposedly Fukushima was supposed to be quake and tsunami proof. So people are very, very nervous about that right now. All right, police are now using license plate readers to grid entire neighborhoods. Now, these are license plate readers on their cars. And basically what gridding means is when they're not actually involved in a traffic stop or solving a crime, they are being told to simply systematically drive up and down every street in the area, indiscriminately scooping up information on the vehicles. Another Fourth Amendment violation. Okay, got to take a break here for station identification, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3 here. And as you probably can see on YouTube, I have an iWatch, which I'm enjoying for the most part. But apparently, Apple has disabled one of the standard features that comes with the iWatch. It's called the Walkie-Talkie app, and I'll be very honest, I was not even aware it was on there. But basically, it simulates a push-to-talk two-way radio between you and somebody else that has accepted your invitation. And the reason Apple has disabled it is apparently a bug was discovered in it which allowed third parties to listen in on your conversations. A little bit of a whoopsie on that one. Now, Apple is promising that they are going to correct that problem, and it'll all be taken care of in the next version of the iWatch firmware. Okay, apparently there was a major outage at Telstra, which is a payment processing system, and it knocked out all kinds of retailers, including Woolworths, ATMs, and basically resulted in people being unable to pay for their purchases unless they had cash. And I've seen this happen so many times at the local Safeway. That's why I do cash. The cards don't always work. All right, let's take a phone call here now. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, just mentioned this about the cops going up and down the street checking in people for no reason. And we talked before about the things that happen at Starbucks. Well, you know what? When the police show that they're enemies of the people, that they're not really public servants, that they serve instead their corporate masters and their the establishment masters, you know what? I don't think it's a bad idea with that person did. That was it a woman or a man that felt unsafe?
Yeah, it didn't really say. It just said a customer. And, I disagree. I mean, if the police are doing something bad, that's one thing. But these guys were just standing there having a coffee. And
yeah, I know that.
I think the customer overreacted because we're living in an age right now where people are being encouraged to be hypersensitive and overreactive, scared of everything that they come across. That's not healthy.
Well, I get the feeling that the person probably wasn't really scared. They were just maybe making a point. Maybe you were angry stuff the police did. What I'm trying to say, Mike, is this. If the police want to be on our side, the people's side of this country, they should refuse to do things if they're told that harass the citizenry and that they're for revenue purposes or to gather information. If they really want, if they continue to do things like that, they should be ostracized. They shouldn't be welcome in stores. They shouldn't be welcome to be among the public. They want to be the enemy of the people. We got to treat them and be an occupying army. And so be it.
But Mark,
that's all I'm saying.
Mark, you're painting with a broad brush here, because the vast majority of police officers are there trying to do a really good job.
Then they should crack down on the ones that don't.
Well, the ones that misbehave and we've got a story about that a little bit further in the talking points, they get the headlines because they're unusual. And frankly, if that customer had really felt afraid of the police being there, probably the best thing would have been for that customer to leave rather than try and get the police kicked out. I think it was a completely inappropriate reaction.
Well, it might have seemed like an inappropriate reaction, but like I said, Mike, there's a lot of things going on that, you're talking about there are a lot of good police officers, but there's plenty of bad ones. And the good ones don't do anything about the bad ones. You got, they tolerate a lot of bad behavior. And on top of that, police continue to obey what are really illegal and unconstitutional orders. Okay? They have no business going and violating people's Fourth Amendment rights. Now, this isn't just, these were, I'm sure the ones doing this are not just bad cops. I mean, I consider them all bad cops when they're doing stuff like that. But this was par for course. They were obeying the orders of their superiors. They should have said, no, we refuse. We're public servants. We're not going to do something like this. We're peace officers. We're not an occupying army. And remember, a police officer is a peace officer, period. There to keep peace, keep order in society. Not there to bully people, not there to harass people. That's all they're supposed to be for. And if they go any further than that, they become an occupying army. And as far as I'm concerned, they should be ostracized. They should all be treated with a brush. Get your act together, and then I'm all for you being, respected in society. But when you disrespect the public, you need to be disrespected. That's all I'm saying, Mike.
Yeah, but again, you're painting with this very, very broad brush here.
Yes, I am.
Because you're punishing the good cops with the bad cops.
Well, the good cops got to get their act together and get rid of the bad cops and do something about them. And they have to start disobeying orders of their superiors that, harass the public or are there to, I don't want to curse. They're the, mess the public, okay? That's not their job. Their job is to be peace officers. If they don't want to be peace officers, they become an occupying army. And if they continue to disobey orders, bad orders, if they obey bad orders, then they should be ostracized, period. No matter how good or bad they're not. Yes, I am painting with a broad brush. Because if you look at an occupying army, look at our troops in Iraq.
Okay, let me spin this around a little bit on you, because the last interaction I had with the police in an official capacity was when the Honda got stolen, twice I might add. And in both cases, the cops were very professional. In the first case, they recovered our car in the space of about 2 hours. And they did a really good job, and they were very polite. We've got very good police out here in Hawaii. And as far as I'm concerned, they have every right to be in a Starbucks having a cup of coffee. And as I said, if this other individual, for all we know, this other individual was planning to have a daylight robbery or something, and that's why they were afraid of the cops being there.
Yeah, again, that could be the case. By the way, Hawaii is a little bit different than than the mainland, okay? There's a little bit, I think they're more like, in some ways, the Asian culture takes place more in Hawaii than it is in the rest of the country. Okay, so I can understand that, what you're saying. But believe me, a lot of garbage goes on here in the mainland. You can drive down the street here in North Carolina, and you got a roadblock. And what do they say? I said, what's going on? License check. Why do I have to show you a license? Why do you have to put up a roadblock? I'm not committing a crime, and nobody else is. But yet, they go and set up things like that. And these are cops. These are not just cops. These are cops obeying orders from their superiors to set up roadblocks like that. They may not be bad cops. They may not be bad people at all. But if you're participating in jacking with citizens, messing with citizens, then you need to be ostracized. That's all I'm saying. You don't deserve respect.
Well, we're going to have to disagree on that one, because again, I think it was the customer who was out of line. And I think it's a symptom of our snowflake culture where, people's self-evaluation is based on finding things to complain about or be offended by or being afraid of. And it's a very mentally unhealthy state of being, I think.
right. I understand what you're saying too, Mike. I really do. I understand, that maybe it was a snowflake. All right. But I also do not like the other story, which didn't surprise me, about police going just checking on if they're violating the Fourth Amendment. If they can't obey the Constitution, they don't need to be respected. And I'm talking about department-wide. If they're going to violate people's rights, they do not deserve to be respected. And the police profession as a whole needs to be ostracized. Be peace officers.
See, you're painting with that broad brush again. Okay.
Yes, I am.
If you're concerned about the unconstitutional orders of the superior officers, let's talk about the superior officers. If you're talking about the police who behave badly, let's talk about the police who behave badly. But to sit there and say that all police everywhere ought to be ostracized, that's not fair. That's completely unreasonable.
I didn't say they should be. I said if they continue
Okay, Mark,
to violate.
you've made your point. Mark, you've made your point, and we're going to have to agree to disagree. So thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And we're going to switch over to Lenny in California. Aloha, Lenny. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. It's good to be on your show. Hey, listen, to the caller before, I'm in agreement with you. I run across both good cops and bad cops. But basically, America is at a point that where everybody is programmed to be at everybody else's throat.
Yes.
And they're at the wrong people's throat. The common people should be together. But, it's just not that way. But like I said, in the end, we're just programmable lumps of flesh, and we're reacting accordingly. But Justin called in yesterday, and he asked about the country of Georgia, and he wanted to get our take on what was going on, which I didn't get to listen to the show yesterday. I had to listen to it last night when I got home, but it gave me some time to do some research on this. On June the 20th, there was a ruckus in the Georgian parliament by some what would be considered nationalists or skinhead types, and it didn't go over well with the people of Georgia. But the government of Georgia refused to do anything. The government of the country of Georgia refused to do anything about it. But then it got more boisterous and boisterous in this past week when one of the TV commentators on Rustavi TV2 came out and called Putin and his parents invaders and murderers, and it was just really horrific commenting. But as a result, the people of Georgia surrounded the TV station a few days later, and some of the reporters quit in protest. Well, there was a lady, Tina Kandalaki, who's Georgian, who's a well-renowned Georgian, came out and spoke on Fort Russ News, and she said that the whole thing that's going on right now is, and this may sound familiar to you, is Saakashvili. You remember him?
Saakashvili.
The so-called Saakashvili. That's his name, Saakashvili. Thank you. He's behind the whole thing, and this coming July the 18th, which is a few days from now, he's going to have to give up the ownership of that particular TV station, and it's going to have to go back to his rightful owner. But since he's had it, he's been in a campaign against Putin. It's almost like what was going on in Ukraine with the nationalists that were used against the Ukrainian people, against the president at that time to overthrow the government. It's the same playbook, which tells me that what's her name, Victoria, the Cookie Monster Newland, is somewhere in the play. Okay, she's somewhere in the background, but I think they got more than what they bargained for, because the people surround the TV station, and were throwing eggs and bottles and everything that they could think of at it, and a couple of the TV reporters resigned and joined the protesters, and Saakashvili now is being called out. Now she gave a quote, and I just would like to say what she said. She said the people also want Saakashvili drowned in the Bermuda Triangle of history. The Georgian people are one mighty people, and the voice of a pseudo-politician who used to chew on his own necktie and is also a pseudo-ex-president and a pseudo-ex-human has no place in the, and he's not even Georgian, by the way, has no place in the Georgian politics or the political structure. So Dustin asked yesterday, and it gave me a chance to do some research, and there it is.
Okay, well, hopefully Dustin is listening, and thank you for the information.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, we're going to switch over to Bob in Colorado. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, I just wanted to talk to you about the police officer situation with cops. I was a cop for 23 years outside of Philadelphia, and I never took bribes. I was pretty much a good cop because I'm 68, so I lived the good days to where you could be a good cop. But before I became disabled, I started seeing the newer guys that were being hired. They were more aggressive. They didn't really have the feelings or compassion that the cops of the day used to have. And you can really see now they're really being turned into, instead of peace officers trying to help the good of man, they are now police officers, and they are policing the government regulations. And there was a documentary, I don't know if you ever saw it, I think it was on Netflix, and it was about 5 or 6 cops, a couple black guys, white guys in New York City that tried to bring down the corruption and ruined their careers.
Yes.
So it's not as easy to sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to turn in this evil chief. It doesn't work that easy. So anyway, I just want to make my comment. I'll listen to you off here. Thanks, Mike.
All right, well, thank you very much. And it is a complex issue, and it almost seems like, the caliber of people being hired by the police departments has changed. Again, in earlier good old days, people were being hired who really had a sense of community service, and today it's just another job. And unfortunately, just like the ordinary people are getting their heads filled with stories about police violence, the police are getting their heads filled with all this talk about how ordinary citizens are attacking them. So it's creating this intense adversarial situation. Okay, we're going to switch over now to Bruce in Texas. Aloha, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. Hello, Mike. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Okay, great. That last caller made a good point. My brother's a retired police officer, and he echoes the same opinions that he saw the changes. He was closing in on his retirement, and I think we can draw a line before and after 9/11. Before 9/11, you had police officers. They had normal hair. You know, it wasn't a buzz cut, like just out of boot camp, and full of tattoos and full of attitude, and tactical this and tactical that. They were just they wore a nice uniform, and they, you kind of, if you're doing wrong, you're going to get slammed, but if you're not, you wave, and everything was fine, And it's just there's an air of intimidation now that is just disconcerting. What do you think?
Well, part of the problem, of course, is that police departments are preferentially hiring returning veterans from the war zones. And so these guys are coming back, with that 1,000-yard stare, and again, that sense of there's danger all around me. And that's why they wear the buzz cuts and the tactical gear. And so, it has reshaped the character, if you will, of the police departments.
Yeah, it sure has. I was wondering, did you listen to Ryan Dawson when he filled in for you?
No, I didn't.
Okay, probably probably better that you didn't. I don't suggest having him on again, but that's up to you.
Well, what is your issue with him?
Yeah, well, the second hour, the topic turned to 9/11, and I was the first caller, and I already knew about Ryan Dawson, so I made extra efforts to not be confrontational, but I took up certain issues with him concerning the video that we saw concerning the airplanes. And there were follow-on callers he was just hanging up on and ridiculing, and it was really bad for your show. That's all I want to say. You may want to
thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, as you are probably already aware, Donald Trump has convened this summit at the White House regarding corporate media and censorship, to which Ben Garrison was disinvited. Little irony there for you here. And I'd like to see something get done about it. Donald Trump has to understand it was social media and the online world that played a major, major role in him being in that job to begin with. But again, given the way that he treated Ben Garrison, it looks like Donald Trump is really not a person who feels a lot of gratitude. His attitude is, yeah, thank you for the help, and we'll get along without you now. So they've got all these various representatives from Facebook and Google and everything up there at the White House, and they're going to wag the finger and say, hey, this stuff has got to stop. But it isn't just political. It's not just conservatism. Obviously, these corporate media outlets are somehow being incentivized to protect the interests of large corporations, whether it's vaccine manufacturers, the GMO industry, who knows what all else is being filtered at this point. It's getting harder and harder to tell. But there's this article here from Blacklisted News basically saying how American corporations are now policing online speech worldwide. And it's saying probably when they were first starting up, these companies never imagined they'd be the global speech police. And yet that's exactly what they've become. And they're a major part of the media. Almost a quarter of the internet's total users watch YouTube. The number of people who tweet is nearly the entire population in the United States. 1/3 of the entire world uses Facebook. That's a lot of power to wield. Okay, about 5 years ago, there was this law firm called Prenda Law, was set up by Paul Hansmere and John Steele, and they basically ran this scam. They would upload copyrighted pornography onto file sharing sites, and then anybody who downloaded it was sued. And they got caught at it, and Paul Hansmere was jailed for 14 years. And John Steele has just been jailed for 5 years. So a little bit of good news there. Now, speaking of copyrights, there is a new bill being considered in Congress that would just wreck the internet as we know it. And it's called the CASE Act. And this is legislation would create a brand new quasi-court for copyright infringement claims on the small scale. The bill would create a copyright troll industry dedicated to filing as many small claims on as many internet users as possible in order to make money through the bill's statutory damages provision. Now, every single person who uses the internet and regularly interacts with copyrighted works, which is everybody, would be exposed to this. And obviously, this violates the fair use provision. So as long as you're going to be calling your members of Congress to complain about the wars and everything else, this is currently in the Senate Judiciary Committee. But it will basically end the internet here. Alrighty, we've had our Microsoft monthly security-only update, but a lot of hardcore users were really rather surprised when they found out that this so-called security-only update was bundled with the Compatibility Appraiser. Now, this is a system designed to identify issues that could prevent a Windows 7 PC from updating to Windows 10. Now, Windows 7 official support is coming to an end, and it looks like Microsoft is getting ready to lay on another big push to get everybody onto Windows 10. And it would probably have been a lot easier to do if Windows 7 applications would run under Windows 10, but most of them do not. So you're required to buy, or in the current business model, rent all new software. And in the current economy, that is really not practical. Okay, apparently, according to Bloomberg, there was this regulation law passed to basically get rid of Chinese-made surveillance cameras, which were determined to have backdoors in them, and they're aiming at an August 13th deadline, which looks like it's not going to happen. So part of the problem is because of the complex supply chain, it's making it difficult for authorities to understand whether security cameras are actually made in China or contain components that would violate U.S. rules. So, it's time for another commercial break. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go to the phones now to Reggie in Virginia. Aloha, Reggie. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Mr. Rivero. I want to ask a question regarding the matter on the southern border. Usually the United States and the other major nations, I'm not sure exactly how it works, whether it's just the Security Council or others, but wouldn't, in the United Nations, wouldn't the amount of activity across the border, with the number of people coming in saying they fear for their life, at what point would they consider it a failed nation in the United Nations become involved?
Well, it's kind of difficult to say. The problem is that the vast majority of people coming across the border saying that they're afraid for their lives are found out to be lying, that they're just trying to get into the country for economic reasons and for free stuff. So if you want to talk about a failed nation, I think
it would say a failed state, but nonetheless it would still be a country. It would still be a country. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's hard to say what the UN would do. I mean, generally when there's a so-called failed country, the UN sends in all kinds of assistance, financial, which usually winds up in the pockets of the corrupt leaders. And but again, in terms of our current situation, none of these countries that are sending refugees north into the United States are failed. Mexico certainly is not failed. Venezuela is under huge stress. They just got hit with more sanctions. But that's an artificially created situation. It's not an internal failure of the government. It's an attack from without.
Okay, then given that, then shouldn't the Congress have, like large corporations collect data, shouldn't they be responsible to collect enough data to realize that what you just stated is exactly what's going on, and then a different approach be established to deal with the matter? Would it, at some point, shouldn't that happen?
Well, a while back there was this study done by Yale and MIT, and I'm sorry if I'm hesitating, but I'm having trouble hearing your phone call. There was a study done by Yale and MIT which estimates there are 26 million illegal immigrants in this country right now. So great that they're going to get rid of 1 million of them starting this weekend, but it is just a drop in the bucket. But again, you have the Democrats are fighting tooth and nail to keep the borders open. They want those illegal immigrant voters. They don't want voter ID law. And it has led to this ridiculous situation where your citizenship is the only privacy that you've got left.
Say that the Democratic Congress, I'm going to use a word that I'm not saying that it may arise to the level of this word, but if it's demonstrated that most of their position in being argumentative, the way that they are argumentative against the things that the president want to do concerning that, let's say on the foundation of there is more abuse. In other words, the people that are coming in, all of them are not to the level of qualifying to come into the country. Wouldn't there be some action that could be taken in Congress against that, or with their?
Well, I mean, Congress doesn't need to take action. We've already got laws on the books that cover all of this. It's called Title VIII, and the problem is a lack of enforcement. And the problem is, of course, obstructionism by the Democrats, not so much through the Congress, but through the court system.
So in a way, it is a level of subversion. No one, you say no one on the the Republican side in other words, are willing to stand up against them and invoke those things. I guess is what you're saying in so many words.
Well, they should be. Again, the question is, to what extent have the Republicans been compromised by George Soros and his one world government, new world order plan? Because it does seem like so many people are on board with that right now among our leadership.
Okay, I'd like to ask one other question. I've been meaning to call you about it. Just real brief. You familiar with Professor, what is his name? Jim Fetzer.
Yes.
Okay, Jim Fetzer, I guess you are aware that he was sued. He wrote a book regarding a matter in New England, the Sandy Hook. And
yes.
He said that was a FEMA exercise, and he demonstrated through documentation, birth certificates, death certificates, that the number of people that they say lost their lives during that is not true. And the other person, I think you may know Wolfgang, I think he was in another matter previously.
Yes, Wolfgang Halbig.
He's being sued. I mean, well, naturally, the death is Fetzer. And I was wondering if you had heard anything else about it. I heard national mainstream news. I didn't hear them say anything about it at all. Not that I didn't. I mean, they may have, but I didn't hear anything about it.
No, corporate media is not covering this at all. Corporate media just wants the American people to forget about Sandy Hook and to forget about the fact that there are actually questions as to whether it happened as we're being told that it happened. And I think part of that is a general awareness that the American people have been lied to so many times and so often that we have grown quite skeptical, and we're not willing to just believe what the TV set or the politicians tell us.
In so many words, then they are silencing him or becoming him pretty much, not with little talk about it, little discussion of it in the mainstream media.
I think they're trying to make an example of both Halbig and Fetzer to discourage other people from coming out with books that question the official story on anything.
That's very interesting. Yeah, okay, well, I won't take much of your time. I was wondering why, I hadn't heard. I did hear on the Saturday program, I did hear the gentleman that has Saturday program. He had Jeff on, and that's where I learned about it.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. I won't take up any more of your time. I just wanted to say that. Well, thank you very much.
All right, thanks an awful lot there, and we had some problems on the phone lines there. Okay, here is another disappointment coming from the Donald. Remember, when he was campaigning, one of the things he campaigned on was to lower drug prices. And apparently, as of today, they have pulled one of its key proposals to lower drug prices by eliminating industry rebates in Medicare. And of course, the health stocks went right through the roof. And so you're going to go on paying higher prices for drugs or driving up into Canada to buy them there. What a sellout, what can I tell you? Alrighty, story coming out of Natural News here. Apparently, another new case of measles has been identified, this time in Los Angeles County, where typhoid fever, tuberculosis, and even bubonic plague are making a comeback thanks to the rampant illegal immigration and homelessness. But rather than take a step back and evaluate the facts, authorities are once again freaking out about people not having the measles vaccine, as if that's somehow the cause of every measles infections. Actually, there are a lot of people who think that the measles vaccine actually causes measles. We don't really know. I mean, especially with those attenuated pathogen vaccines, they can revert to full potency once they're administered. They had a real problem with the oral polio vaccine a few years ago, where they were administering that to patients, and the pathogen returned to full potency and ran the risk of actually giving people polio. And as a matter of fact, story coming on out of Salon.com, how there is a polio-like virus spreading in the United States, paralyzing children. And this is a warning coming from the CDC, which, by the way, owns quite a few patents on vaccines and makes a lot of money. And they're saying, don't call it polio or polio-like. It's called acute flaccid myelitis. And so far, there have been 11 confirmed cases in 8 states with 57 patients under investigation. Now, I know why the vaccine companies are trying to keep a lid on all of this. If it came out that they have for decades knowingly been injecting kids with products that are harmful, they would never survive the lawsuits. They'd be in the same situation that Monsanto is in right now. So they're doing everything they can to shut down doubts about vaccine safety, and probably include some kind of emolument to the social media corporations. You know, just filter out anything about vaccine doubts and we'll do something nice for you. The Russian Orthodox Church officially opposes compulsory vaccinations for children. And they're saying, first and foremost, concern for the welfare of children, including their health, is entrusted by God to their parents. And said, in summary, no one has the right to make this choice for them. And they're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. Okay. All right, 2 years ago, there was this opioid kingpin, John Kapoor of Insist Therapeutics, and he was arrested and charged for running a criminal drug cartel that was bribing doctors to write prescriptions for the medication. He's finally been convicted, and he's going to go to jail, along with 4 of his co-defendants found guilty of illegally paying off doctors to prescribe the opioid fentanyl, which directly contributed to the current opioid epidemic. There's really no moral difference between the doctors who accept this money to prescribe these medicines and that guy down on the street corner in the hoodie. It's the same morality. So prosecutors are hoping this will send a clear message that drug companies will no longer be allowed to get away with conspiring to illicitly distribute dangerous and highly addictive opioids. So they're going to go after that. Now, here is an interesting little story. You're all familiar with the CRISPR technology. This is the gene editing technology. It's been in the headlines a lot. And there is a company, eGenesis, and what they are doing is they're using CRISPR to alter pig DNA so that the organs from the pigs can be transplanted into other animals. Now they're starting with monkeys, but their ultimate goal is to use this process to create transplantable organs for human beings, which would certainly relieve the stress on human organ shortages. Now, the testing is being conducted at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. It obviously has not been tried out on humans yet, but that's where they're going with this. Okay. Alrighty, if you go to a restaurant and you order the salmon, you might want to be a little careful, because apparently GMO salmon is going to be offered at restaurants without telling the customers. Now, wild-caught salmon is a well-known source of protein, healthy omega-3 fatty acids, nutrients including selenium, vitamin B12, and potassium. Compared to their farm-raised cousins, salmon caught in the wild are also generally lower in contaminants, lower in fat. But now, because wild-caught fish tend to be more expensive, restaurant owners and grocery stores are turning to GMO-produced salmon and not really informing the customers. You're not allowed to have a choice. You will love your GMO. You will absolutely love your GMO. All right, over at Ariane Space, they've had a little bit of a whoopsie. They were using their Vega rocket to launch an Emirati military satellite into orbit, and apparently 2 minutes after launch, it veered off course and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. They're not calling it a crash. They're calling it a major anomaly. Yes, we've had a major anomaly here. And they've apologized to the customers for the loss of the payload. I presume it's insured. But it is going to set back whatever UAE was going to do with the satellite has now been set back. Japan's Hayabusa 2 probe has successfully landed on the distant asteroid Ryugu and collected samples that could shed light on the evolution of the solar system. Now, back in April, the probe fired an impactor at the surface of the space rock to make a crater and stir up material that had not previously been exposed to space, to sunlight. So this probe is the first to successfully collect underground soil samples from an asteroid, coming just ahead of a NASA mission targeting another asteroid. So good luck to them. China's next lunar probe, Chang'e 5, scheduled to be launched around the end of this year, is going to use artificial intelligence technologies in the soft landing as well as sample collection process. Now, Koyang Zion, former chief scientist of China's Lunar Probe project, made the statement during a conference on satellites in space held in Rizhao, East China's Shandong province, from Friday to Sunday. And according to China's National Space Administration, the Chang'e 5 mission wants to bring back 2 kilograms of samples from the moon surface, which will make China the third country to return lunar samples to Earth after the United States and Russia. Okay, we mentioned this story earlier in the show, but a Florida police officer has been arrested on suspicion of 52 counts of planting meth and other street drugs on motorists, and he's facing a huge raft of both felony, misdemeanor charges. At one point, he planted meth on a grandmother. So, going to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. I was just taking a look here, latest update on Tropical Storm Barry. There's a hurricane warning in effect. Looking at the space-based image, I'm not seeing an eye wall form just yet, but again, they said that might happen over the weekend. And so again, if you're in that part of the country, please take care of yourself. And if you're told to evacuate, go ahead and do it. Needless to say, the carbon Nazis are out there screaming, see, this is proof of human-caused global warming. Tropical Storm Barry wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you and your unwillingness to pay carbon taxes here. Well, apparently over in Finland, in Turku University, two researchers, Jirka Kapinen and Pekka Malmi, basically did a study, and their conclusion was that climate is dominated by cloud formation, not by human activity. And they've estimated the human contribution to carbon dioxide as 1/100th of a degree over the last century, centigrade. So they're out there saying, you know, clouds are the culprit behind climate change, and they are. They reflect the sunlight back out into space, and that cools the Earth. When you have a more active sun and the clouds, or rather when you have a quieter sun and fewer clouds being formed, then things get a little bit warm. So what has all this nonsense been about all this time about, you know, human-caused global warming and carbon taxes, and you're going to do what we tell you to do? And it turns out what they're doing is they're monetizing the air. I used to joke about this when I was talking about how they were taking, you know, water out of the tap, filtering it, putting it back in a bottle, selling it to you for $2. And I said, one day they're going to do the same thing to the air. And it turns out that's what they've been doing. And the way they're doing it is through this carbon tax idea. The idea that, you know, if you don't pay the carbon tax, the whole world is going to suffocate. They're monetizing the air. And it's going to cost you. Because there's nothing left to monetize. There's very little. So they're getting desperate out there. Got to find new business, new markets here. We'll charge them to breathe. We'll charge them for the air. Now then. So, what a crazy time we live in here with this whole Jeffrey Epstein nonsense. That's going to keep unraveling. As I mentioned earlier in the show, his bail hearing is set for Monday. If they let him go, he'll be gone. He's a billionaire. He can walk away from that $77 million townhouse without a second thought. I mean, he's got a place in Paris. He's got a place in European ski country. He's got a ranch out in New Mexico. He's got the island down in the Caribbean. This guy has no shortage of places where he can go live. Or he can go down to the Cayman Islands and play canasta with Ken Lay. But it does show just how corrupted our system is as we see Alex Acosta try and justify letting this guy off these heinous crimes. Okay, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. I got to get cracking on some of this packing and getting ready for the move here because it's coming up on us rather suddenly and I don't want to get left behind. Anyway, stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We need all the help we can get right now. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.